Okay, recording started. Okay, let's get going then. So everyone, I'm going to introduce you a little bit to the Organic Agility app and the OrgScan in particular. But in order to do that, I want to share with you a little bit first what is the theory and the structure behind it, and why are we, for example, capturing a decision-making process to determine a lot of factors about organizational agility and resilience. And in order to do that, I'm going to share with you my iPad screen and give you a very short introduction to one of the aspects that we also use in training for organic agility. And what you just see on your screen is an overview that allows us to understand a little bit how organization work internally. So typically we have organization which sometimes do have a vision, not all the time, but sometimes they do have a vision. And this vision is going to be broken down into goals. And each of these goals is probably going to be an object or a subject of our planning or strategy within the organization. And these goals are going to be basically reached by producing certain results. And these results are in turn the output of specific actions which happen through the organization. And these actions are in turn based on decisions that people make every day. And these decisions are based on their beliefs. The beliefs themselves, in turn, are developed through experiences within the organization. So if we think about this type of view, we can draw basically a line here in the middle and divide the pyramid in two parts. And we can say that the part which is visualized below the pyramid, so the bottom part, this one here, is what we would normally refer to as the organization culture. And this is something that we can visualize in a way. We can observe, because we can observe the behavior that are emerging out of this culture. We can observe the rituals which are visible within the culture. We can listen to the stories of success and failure that are visible or are listenable at the water cooler, at the coffee machine, when you meet colleagues, around the company. But also we can pay attention to everything which is basically related to values, or what drives people to come to work on a daily basis and what motivates them to do the work. Now, we mentioned before that in the middle of the pyramid, exactly where that line lays here, this is the point where people have to make decisions. And decision which converts what they believe being right or wrong into what transform then into actions. As a parallel to what we had below in terms of culture, we can say that the above part here is what we call structure within an organization. And this structure is anything we build ourselves, such as roles, processes, for example, policies, anything which is in a way structure that we put in place in order to be able to deliver result and in order to be able to achieve those goals. Now, the interesting part about this layer here, the decision, is that as long as the vision up here is relatively stable, and as long as the goal don't move all over the places, then there is a strong likelihood that the structure we created are helping people making those decisions in a good way, following the process, following the policies and the structure. But in case the goals and the visions are very volatile, because the market is unstable, because we live in COVID time, so you know what, from one day to the next, all your business model needs to be rethought. And so in times of uncertainty and high volatility, the likelihood that people will make decisions which are coherent and move the organization in a common direction is very, very low, unless the bottom part of the pyramid is strongly coherent, which means the culture of the organization needs to be coherent if we want people to be able to decide, and the effect of their decision still aims toward a common direction. If we lack coherence in beliefs and values, very likely people will decide moving in different direction because they value different things, because they believe right and wrong are different things. There is another aspect to this, which is also impacting organization, and is what the OrgScan tries to highlight as well and to help us solve the problems, is how much do we spend in terms of time in managing the last mile, in correcting action and making sure that projects finish on time or budget or hit the goals, or making sure everybody in during work is focused in delivering the value that we planned. And on the other side, instead, how much time do we spend down here in leading the organization to develop the right beliefs and the right through the right experience, in order to prevent or in order to increase the likelihood that when things become uncertain on the outside, because it's something we can't control, at least internally people remain coherent to their own beliefs and ideas, and they keep on delivering results in a direction which is helpful for the company. So what we are trying to do with organic agility is to help organizations shift the balance between managing and leading, in particular on a leadership level. But as in organic agility, we consider leadership an organizational capability. We are actually helping everybody to understand how to lead and when to lead, and primarily focusing on what is the impact of those decisions on the organization. Okay, so this is the general model within which we operate with organic agility. And I'm going to show you now, and this is the reason why with the OrgScan, we created a tool which allows us to capture the impact of decision-making on a daily life of the employees of an organization, and allow us to measure what is the impact on the above layer in terms of actions and result, but also what was the foundation on which this decision were based, both in terms of leadership behaviors, which can be both on a management side, so to say, as well as on a leadership side, and as well as what the underlying culture of the organization is. And we will see that if the culture is incoherent and it goes a bit all over the places, then very likely the decision will also not aim toward a common goal, and the organization consequently will be a little bit lost, or the cost of change will be very high whenever we start moving goals around and basically trying to achieve a common goal. So this was a little bit the theory behind, which is just to give everybody a little bit of context. And the way we are actually helping organization to identify where they're strong or where they're weak, and what are the right approaches to decision making, is through the tools that we developed, which is called Organic Agility app. The one you see now is a dashboard, and this dashboard is at this moment is simulating a situation in which a new company came to us and started using the OrgScan and capturing decision. And you see that what the dashboard shows is basically that there are 9 days remaining to capture the decision. There's been 65 decision captured so far. There is a data set affinity of 72%. I'm going to explain this one in a minute. And here we have the amount of decision taken by each of the department, which has been listed as demographics inside the application. So in the application, we can configure up to 5 different levels of demographics, which include the country, the location, the department, the role, and the tenure. The tenure is the amount of years that an employee worked within the company. The tenure is particularly interesting because if employees just onboard the company, probably they have a different perspective, a narrower perspective of what is going on, and their reaction to decisions is different from the one probably from employees which are a longer time in the company, have a broader knowledge about what the overall culture is, and also how they live this decision on a daily basis. So the 72% data set affinity means that the amount of decision, the 65 that we have collected so far, are basically 72% accurate when we compare it to the head count that the organization has in each of those departments. The reason why we want to measure affinity is to make sure that the cultural profile that we can create for an organization is as close as possible representative of the actual population of employees within different departments. So if you look at the chart on the right, the gray bar are proportional to the head count within that organization, and you can see that this second the second bar over here, where is the IT department, there's obviously few people here, but they capture a lot more of decision than any other department did. This is why the affinity is quite low. So in order to get balance again, we would have to see sales, for example, and finance, as well as marketing, capturing a lot more of decision for this number to go up. So the way people capture decision and the way we prompt them to do it is basically every time they are affected during work by a decision while they're doing their work, they basically have to tell a story about it. They have to tell their own version on how they lived that specific decision. And the way they do it is by adding here a decision. For example, I just put down a decision that we had today in one of the squad, which is we have decided together with our squad to explore the possibility to offer online training modules for free and to create an initial reputation about the capability of Agile 42 to deliver online content effectively. The model should allow us to create a group of loyal users to which we can then upsell more content over time, either with weekly drips or with a subscription model in the future. So how would I call this? I can give an hashtag, or I can give simply a title to this story. And in this case can be a new promotion for online trainings. And then what I'm asked to do is basically to signify this story. So this story is about a decision that affected me or impacted me during work, whether I made it or someone else made it. And now I have to basically signify how I lived this decision personally. And I consider this to be a tactical operational decision. The decision was made probably within a week. So it was a bit of a long discussion. It was not happening immediately. We had a lot of consideration to take in account. And the way we make the decision was in a group conversation. And the decision was made by the team and made us, or me at least, feel positive about it. And this kind of decision are made now and then, which means less than 50% of the time if I look at all decisions happening during a normal week. And now we come to a point, this one here, which is called the triads, which is a patented technology from Cognitive Edge, which created the tools SenseMaker, for which we use their technologies. The logo is up here on the right side. And basically what the triads do, they confront people who are capturing information with 3 different options, each of which is either right or wrong. So there is no explicit right or wrong decision. And the patent is about creating a cognitive load. So people cannot just click and go away, because what they need to do is to move this little circle here in a direction according to what they think mostly influenced the decision. And in this case, I feel like was mostly influenced by the market, but also by the peer, not so much about external advice, or even if a little bit of contribution was also coming from there. So I'm positioning the sphere there. You see there is an infinite amount of possibility within this space. So it's almost impossible to game or cheat within this type of signification. Then making this decision was mostly helped by experience, by intuition, principle, or by process. I think we made a lot of experience by trying and attempting many things, but also at the same time we had intuitions which came to the aid. And then the decision reflects a situation that was familiar, problematic, difficult, or rare, unusual. I would rather say more rare and unusual because we don't do much this type of things. And so it was for us somehow new. And then this is about understanding the risk, the implication of such a decision. So the possible consequences of this decision would be manageable, significant, critical, or recoverable at a cost. Well, the fact that we decided to make some module free is of course manageable or recoverable at a cost, hopefully, but is not going to kill us in terms of economical terms. So I'm going to make it somewhere their direction. And then to make the decision, what was needed was decisive action, collaborative consensus building, or rational analysis. Probably here we were a little bit more in this direction. So some consensus building, definitely rational analysis, absolutely not decisive action, also because it took us almost a week to come to that conclusion. So it was nothing fast. And in making this decision, compromises were made on resources, on time, and on relationship. Relationship is the dimension which plays a lot with internal politics in an organization. So if I never compromise on relationship, means I'm continuously trying to keep political balance to my own advantage, probably, or there might be any other reason. But in this case, we definitely compromise on resources and not so much on time, because we are still online and we are operating continuously, but we're probably gonna receive less money with this approach, but we hope to increase the amount of user. Then we come to a point, the last bit, where there are basically 4 different indicators, which are called leadership, orientation, effectiveness, and value driver, with a small explanation here. And then what happens is when I click on one of these icons, you see the canvas changes, and I can drag the icons, and I can think of, okay, how was the leadership approach during this decision making? Was trying to facilitate, mentor, team building, was trying to compete to produce results, was innovative, was coordinating, and so on. So I think it was a little bit mentoring, a little bit facilitating, but definitely more trying to innovate and create new content, which is consumable. Then orientation. Overall, we have been very collaborative during this conversation. We also asked help to external advisor on some things. How was the effectiveness? What did we try to achieve? We tried to definitely achieve innovation and probably create new content and new resources. So it's definitely more on this side, but we still have been very collaborative, and our focus was in involving everybody. So it's not too far away from that middle line. And then what was driving us? Well, again, here I think was mostly innovative output, but also market share and goal achievement on one side. And so we're probably somewhere in that place. Then when I'm done with it, you can see down here now, there is already my demographic, because there is a cookie and the system remembers in which department I am and which role I am. But the first time I do it, I basically see also this question. So now, just to balance the thing we have seen before, I would say I am a finance, I am head of department in finance, and I work in the company since let's say 9 to 10 years. And then I'm submitting this decision, and thanks for the decision. And here again, a reminder that the data is collected anonymously, so there is no way that someone will be able to come back and reconnect to me. And now you see, now we have 66 decisions with the one we just introduced, and we have a 73% of data set affinity, because I increased the count now in finance. And so if you look at the gray bar, the proportion is now more close to what is the head count in each of the department. This is important because if there is different leadership or different type of structure within each department, is likely also that there will be different, slightly different cultures in there. So we want to be sure that we capture a sample of decision stories from different people coming from the department, which is proportional to the head count in those departments, so that we will have a better picture of what is happening. So this is the initial capture process, and the process will either terminate when the 9 days are over, when we captured at least 200 decisions and we have at least a 90% data set affinity. So it can stop in any one of which one of the two conditions fire first, of course. And when the process of capturing is finished, what we are doing, we are creating a report which has already a template that I'm going to share with you right now. And this is basically a report which you can see here is quite comprehensive. This is a new report, and this will be sent then to the client. And here there is a lot of analysis about employee engagement, about the response time of the organization, about overall emotional response of the employee, about what are the natural disposition of the organization, about leadership style, and how that leaders' behavior and risk management actually affect the speed of decision making, and a lot of other chart and statistics, also culture profile on different dimension and what does it mean, various heat maps. So a lot of information that help the organization basically understand where do we stand at this point in time. And this is particularly important because when the organization wants to change and want to become more resilient and more agile, they need to realize first where do they stand. Where is it that they're starting from? Because just implementing model and framework doesn't help, because all of those model and framework, which are agile, somewhat at least considered agile, have a lot of pre-requirement in terms of cultural connotation and cultural context. So you can't use agile tool if your culture is not ready for it. So just implementing a model might not be the best way to improve agility. So this is the simplest thing. So it's just really capturing, pay money for it, fixed price, then you get a report and you read it yourself and you interpret yourself. Another approach we have to this is basically offering what we call an organizational assessment, which will follow the similar process, but additionally to just sending the report, what we would do, we would basically interview up to 10, 15 people within the organization, and this can be done remotely. We will run a couple of workshops, which could also be done remotely, to understand how people see their organization from the inside. And then combining what we learn from the OrgScan with what we learn through the interviews and the workshop, we are actually creating another presentation, which includes a lot of suggestions for improvement. So we are not just giving them, look, this is the mirror on how your organization look like, but we are also providing them suggestion, because we are able, with what the OrgScan tell us and with the validation process that we go through in the interview, to basically provide valuable, actionable insights so that the organization can already start changing in a direction which is probably productive and providing them with short, medium, and long-term return. Another options that we have, or another path, if you want, after this initial scan, is to actually switch the OrgScan to continuous capturing. And this is what I'm just doing now behind the scene in the administration interface. And now I'm going to share the screen again and show you the application, and now it changes. So if I now switch the mode correctly, I switch now the OrgScan from one-time capture to actual continuous capturing. And when we switch to continuous capturing, what you see is the dashboard completely changes. And the dashboard now shows the result in real time. So every time someone captures a decision, it shows you some of those charts which are in the report, including the cultural profile, in real time directly. And it allows us to compare what happened, for example, in the last 12 weeks compared to the previous 12 weeks, or compared to the previous 8 weeks, so that we can actually see movement. We can see where things are moving towards, and also measure in real time if the impact of the coaching, of the consulting that we are doing with that specific client is actually having the effect that we want. Yeah. And additionally to this, and this is the last bit, and then I let you shoot questions, there is also a part of the tool which is called the strategy map. And the strategy map is a way with which we can model our organizational strategy in the tool. But the interesting part about this is that we can have goals, we can have success factors, which are what we call confirmed, so things that we already know are working and are bringing us money. but we also have what we call potential success factor, or PSF. And potential success factor are hypotheses which need to be validated through experiment. So we can model the hypothesis, the experiment in the tool. We can create experiment canvas describing what is it that we are going to experiment, how are we going to experiment, what are the success and failure conditions, because based on the suggestion that we give or the activity that the company decided to do themselves in order to improve, we can then see here on the dashboard also the result of the experiment, and even compare, if there was an experiment running, the current running experiment with the rest of the organization. And this is very important, because one of the most common mistakes when we do change management is that we measure before the change a baseline. So we do whatever type of assessment, we set KPIs, then we do something, and then we measure them again after 3 months or 6 months. So we see that those numbers changed, but there is no evidence that they changed because of what we did. Because what if the organization would have come to that point anyway, and that would have been their natural evolution? We would never know that. But what the OrgScan does, allow us, using what is called vector theory of change, to actually compare in real time how the context within one experiment that we are running change compared to the natural evolution of where the rest of the organization is going. And we can compare the two in real time. So we are sure that what we are doing is actually having an effect, and is probably having the effect we expect to have or we want to have in the organization, by looking at all the factors which are related to our decision-making process. As we learned at the beginning, has influence both on the action, in the leadership style, in how decisions are made, in the speed at which decisions are made, in who makes most of the decision. Is it the team? Is it the leadership? Is it a group of people? Is a committee? And so on. So the fastest the decision-making process runs into a company, the higher is the likelihood that they are more agile and resilient. As much as how bigger or larger is the diversity within an organization, within certain coherence boundaries, then the more likely is the organization will be able to react to changes very quickly and adapt basically their processes so that they can readjust their trajectory in very short time at a very cheaper cost. So that's it, 32 minutes or 30. So now shoot questions.
Okay, thanks Andrea for the demonstration. I mean, among a lot of stuff that we discussed in the last meeting, this one is one of among others that I think there are great possibilities to engage with companies here. So my question, I have 2 questions to clear them out. And the first thing is, have you tried to do this to create benchmarks across industries in terms of how certain industries behave? Because at least our clients, they love to do diagnosis, they love to do assessments, they love to do this kind of stuff. But the thing they love the most is to see how the competitors or how the market, how the industry is behaving the same stuff. So yeah, that's something that if you ever tried, in the end of the presentation, you mentioned the natural evolution. Do you have like control groups for that stuff? I mean, numbers of how the control group behaviors compared to the group that has been going through both management and leadership's transformations in order to create that vision that you mentioned previously. So that's both a question. If you have benchmarks, control groups, and also, yeah, pretty much it.
Well, we are starting collecting some comparative data by industry sector, and that is something that we can do because we know where the company are from. The problem is we don't have enough data at the moment to be able to actually provide a comparison, but there is an intention, and actually we already have a couple of pages in our report who basically allow you to compare, look, the top 10% companies in your industry sector are like this and you are like that. And so you can have that kind of affinity type of behavior. But in order to be able to do that with a certain amount of accuracy, we need a lot more of data than what we have at the moment. So we need to run more OrgScan and categorize or qualify those data based on the industry sectors, and then start building incrementally this comparative tool. So it will take a while. We even had the idea to actually, once we have enough data, to actually release yearly, for a price, of course, a kind of report, a yearly report on what is the level of resilience in different industry areas and countries and things like that. But that requires a massive amount of data to be captured and analyzed in order to be able to do such a thing. And the second question,
Okay.
comparative control groups. Well, normally when we work with organization, we do create experiments group, and we do have an approach to it, which is the one of the strategy map framework. So we have actually experiment teams, we have improvement squads with champions who are controlling how this experiment works. And we keep the experiment team completely isolated from the rest of the organization for the duration of the experiment, which normally is between maybe 1 week up to 8 week maximum, depending on how comprehensive is the experiment that people are running. And then we keep those groups completely separated. And what the tool does, because the tool also tracks who are the volunteer in each one of the experiment team, is actually allocating their decision that is captured toward the experiment or toward the rest of the organization, depending on how the team are split. So in this way, we always have two different groups of data, and we can use those as active comparison to see what are the impact actually of the work we do compared to the rest of the organization. And in fact, this is also a little bit a tip. When you set up experiment, you should try to set them up in a way that they are as isolated as possible. So you don't never do two experiments which are affecting the same factor and they are overlapping. If you run experiment like that, you have to keep them separate and run them in parallel so that you can see how different attempts to change, for example, the culture toward a more collaborative one are actually working or not working. So depending on the level of complexity of the experiment, you might run multiple parallel experiments, but still in isolation, and then compare all those data from the different control groups, and then look at what of the initiatives that you are actually doing is working best. And then to amplify the success, you can actually share with the other group what one group is doing that is making them more successful. You just tell the other group to try that out as well, and then you keep on measuring. So you see if what you found out or you think to have found out that makes one group successful is actually really a success factor, or is just luck or other conditions that in that group are making them more successful. So in this way, the development of the organization, the evolution, is very much data-driven and experience-based, validated, rather than driven by intuition and assumption. Make sense?
And just a quick, yeah, make all sense. And just a quick follow-up on that. For Ito example, the company that we were talking about, the opportunity there is to do that to 1,000 teams, I would say. So maybe 6,000 to 8,000 people. And how to deal with different sensibility in terms of agile, because I mean, there's a team that are guys that came from Netflix, Spotify, Facebook, and so on. So they have a different understanding and awareness when it's come to agile, and it's come to how to deal and to answer with all that assessment. And there are other teams who is doing agile, but for the past 6 months. So different teams having different experience, they can answer, and they will probably answer pretty different because they have different awareness from what they consider to be authoritarian, what they consider to be collaborative. So how to deal with this different understanding of the assessment in order to actually best teams don't provide the worst assessments in terms of evolution and so on.
Well, the thing is, the OrgScan measure the reality, right? So whatever that reality is, everybody will answer according to their best understanding. And what we can do then is to filter those data. For example, we can filter by department, and we can filter by role, and we can filter by even group. So if you have actual group instead of department, you can then use that as a demographic, or you can have a team instead of a role if you want to, right? So you can choose which are the 5 dimensions with which you can slice, and then you can filter and compare one with the other, and making sure that you see those nuances, those differences, right? So that's the best way to do. But the reality is that if we find out that within an organization the culture is all over the places, which means it's very incoherent, then we know that probably some teams are more in the collaborative area, some teams are more in the control area, some teams are more in the competing area. So that's not a big deal, because with the OrgScan and with the report, we can actually filter those things out. And then ultimately, when you move on a team level, you can actually go and measure using the cohort assessment, using the archetype assessment, and understand where that team specifically is. And then you can go team by team, and the composition of the culture of all your team will give you the organization culture, right? The two things are not disconnected from one another.
I have a question.
Bruno?
Go ahead, Bruno. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Renata?
Okay. First of all, thank you for all the explanation. Lots of the questions that I have is already answered. But I'd like to know if you usually do something in order to engage people before starting the whole process.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. Oh, we tried many things. So as you know, many companies are really tired of surveys, and everybody does surveys, and employees just go like, bam, 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 click, 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 leave me alone. And there's a problem with those type of surveys. And the problem is that surveys tend to be evaluative. So it means when you do a survey and there is an answer from 1 to 5, everybody knows 5 is the best. And so everybody tries to actually comply to the expectation of the department or HR or whatever it is that made the survey, because then they know, okay, then if we comply to their expectation, then we are done with it, and then we can do our job again, right? The difference is the OrgScan is not an evaluative system, but is a descriptive system. So there is no right or wrong answer. We are just asking people to tell their own story. So we are not giving predefined story and tell us you agree or not, 1 to 10, but we are just telling you, hey, you have been impacted by a decision. Tell us the story, and tell us how you describe how you live this story against this framework of signifiers. So first of all, it's much less gameable, the system, because it's your own story and you have to describe how it happens. So the data quality we get is much higher. And in terms of engagement, it actually allows people to express themselves, because we're asking them to tell us what they think. So there is an element in that. Nevertheless, we try different strategies to convince or help organizations starting capturing. So one of those which we've been using recently also is the fact that we look at what we call multipliers. So we ask the organization to choose people who are normally opinionated and they have a good understanding of this type of things. They have a good network of connection in the company. And we do a workshop with them. We explain them a little bit the theory like I just did with you, but over 2 or 3 hour time. We make some examples and so on. And we use their input to actually calibrate the system and understand, okay, if there is written external advisor, for example, what does it mean to you? How would you interpret it in your organization? Is it someone from another department? Is it someone from another team? Is it someone from completely outside of the company? So how would your culture interpret that? And then you ask them to give an answer, and then they all agree, okay, external advisor for us means someone completely outside of the company. And I said, well, if that is the case, then we ask this group of people to go around the organization and start pulling in more and more employees. So I'm telling them, hey, look, whenever a decision affects you, there is this new tool. You can go in there and put your thing. And so they basically pair and capture the first 1 or 2 decisions together. And then it starts a little bit like a snowball. And then after a few days, few weeks, you will see there's a constant stream of decisions coming in, right? That's one strategy. But what we just implemented now with the new version that I show you with the first cockpit, that system automatically nudges every week, sends an email to everybody who participated and shows them the result. So it's kind of engaging, and it's telling them, look, your department is doing really good, thumbs up, thanks for contributing, or your department is lagging a little bit behind, can you please remember to document a decision from time to time. So the system is kind of engaging people with a bit of gamification also, to show you like how other departments are doing, so that people are more like probably engaging, and is also showing you have time left, so it creates a sense of urgency, and also gives you a feeling of completion, so that people go like, come on, let's do a couple of more so that we get the result, right? So, and we tried many aspects. Other companies are also setting up interviewers. For example, this is a good thing for everybody who is newly onboarded in an organization to learn the job that everybody's doing. You can go around with an iPad, interview people, and capture decision in the OrgScan. So you have basically people who go around and interview others and ask, hey, what was the decision that impacted you the most this week? Can you tell me about it? How does it look like? So by doing that, they actually learn about the job that everybody's doing. And that's also valuable. So you need to find ways. So if organizations are very hierarchical and very much process driven, you can actually build the OrgScan into their standard reporting system. And you tell them, hey, part of the reporting is now you do the OrgScan, but you don't do the other thing. So that everybody goes like, yay, so we have less work to do, but if we do the OrgScan, right? So you always have to find a way in which you can embed it into the organization. But the whole goal is that if people understand the value and they continue capture continuously, and they start using the strategy and other things, then you will learn a lot of stuff about how your organization works in a way.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
But the fact that HR department are flooding their organization with any sort of survey is something we can't unfortunately prevent. And especially all those employees engagement stuff thingy is absolutely ridiculous, but is run every 3 months or every 6 months sometimes. And I mean, everybody games it. They already know what the HR department expect, and they exactly click, because if they don't, then someone comes to their department and say, oh, what can we do? You're not so engaged. How can we help you? And so on. And then everybody goes like, no, leave me alone. And yeah. So Bruno.
Hello, and sorry for my being late, but I was at another meeting here in Brazil.
No
I am working with Airan, Renata, Tanya, Luciano at Wisnet, okay? I think you already answered a part of my question, but I want to know your opinion. In Brazil, in my opinion, the leadership is very resistant about Agile here. Sometimes because they don't know how to work in Agile, or sometimes because are very resistant, okay? In your opinion, how is the engagement of the leadership after the provocations of the examples you said? What are your opinions? Do you have any example shown?
Well, there's a couple of things. So first of all, the OrgScan doesn't measure agility. It measures the organization, right? So whether the organization is agile or not, it doesn't matter. It's just asking people to describe how they lived a decision-making process. And then with the result, we can understand how much agile is an organization really, and not because they have posted on the wall, but because they're actually customer-oriented, because they deliver incrementally, because they focus on continuous improvement. So there's a lot of values and principle behind that. So our experience is, depending on the assessment we did, and we do many assessments, oftentimes, I mean, the resistance of the leadership is connected to the fact that they maybe feel that something is not going okay. Maybe they feel that something could be improved. But the difference is when you come to them with hundreds of data points and you show them, look, this is why our employees think about your organization. What is it that you are going to do about it? So we are not telling them you have to become more agile otherwise, but we are saying, look, this is a fact. Your employees are negative every time a manager makes a decision. Why is that? Why they react negatively? It's because you don't communicate it right. It's because you don't involve them into that decision, because they are the expert and you don't ask. Why do you think that is happening? And we can formulate hypotheses, and through the interview we do with people, we actually find out why they are unhappy, because we are asking the people. We are not making any assumption. We are not interpreting the data for the people. We are asking them to do it. And so they will tell us, maybe 7 people out of 10, they will tell us, this is the way we feel about decision making. And so the way we confront the leadership is with actual data and backed up information, and they cannot say, no, this is not true. I mean, they can accept or not accept the result in different ways, but I want to show you an example of an assessment also, because I brought it up. So I can give you a little bit more of context on that. And so this is an assessment summary, for example, something that we do when we do the things in person. So we are really going to the company, asking them, or even remotely. We do activity online also, which allow us to ask people, how do you see your company working? This is a business alignment. We create a SWOT analysis. We look at different team archetypes. How do they work? How do they perform? What are the story of success and failure for each of these teams? So we have a lot of actual stories from them, not from us. So it's not we judging them, but we are helping them opening. And then here you see all the OrgScan data, and we point out really what are the things which are suspicious if we look at the data set, right? Like, for example, here, all the people hired in the last 6 months have a 17% negative emotional response. So you have an issue with your onboarding process, clearly, right? Because there's a very high percentage of negativity here. In the middle here also, all the people between 1 and 2 years are very negative about how the situation goes on. And looks like the negativity in terms of percentage increases the more people stay in the company. So why is that happening, right? So they cannot say it's not true. So here we basically write down the fact, we formulate an hypothesis, then what we do, we interview people, we show them the same exact picture, and we ask them, what does it mean to you? And based on their response, we move this trigger basically, and we say, well, the hypothesis is very likely to be true, or is rather low hypothesis. So if you look, there's a lot of data that we analyze and ask question about, and you see all the hypotheses that we do, and also what is the likelihood that the hypothesis is correct. And after all of these interviews, we are also recommending what to do. So because of this, we recommend that. Because of this, we recommend that. And so then everybody can decide, okay, I want to go forward or not. We never say your only chance to move on is to do a full agile transformation, or to implement SAFe or less, or Spotify model or whatever. We are telling them this is a problem you're having at the moment, and this is the way we suggest you to solve it, and what you want to do about it, right? And so it's more of an evolutionary approach. We start from where they are. We are not telling them you have to implement this new organization blueprint, but we are telling them, look, this is where you are now, and these are the problem you have now, and this is the problem which is mostly affecting your employee engagement. And in every company which is knowledge-based in terms of work focus, having disengaged employees is killing, because if people don't believe in what they do and they don't care, their productivity and their result will be poor at best, right? So you want to have people engaged. So if you see any reason why people are disengaged, you need to do something. You cannot say, you know, I don't care. And then we propose stuff. And if they say, okay, let's try this one, and then we go step by step. If it works and they are happy, they go, okay, let's focus on the other problem, and then on the other problem. So we tend to build partnership with our client, which lasts many years. I mean, we are working with Siemens. I think I started in 2011. We are in 2020. It's 9 years. We are working with Siemens in different departments, in different areas, different cities. But because we build a trust relationship, and they know that when we do something is long lasting and the impact is measurable, then they keep on calling us. Yeah, even in time of crisis like now. Make sense?
Okay.
Cool.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else?
All right, I have one.
Yeah.
Andrea. Okay, bye.
Luciano was first.
Thanks. Yeah, based on your experience, first, congratulations on the platform. I loved it. What are the situations you guys think works best and the situations where it doesn't work so well?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer because, I mean, to be honest with you, let me try to tell you a story another way around. We always suggest our customer to start with the assessment because they need to know where they are for real. We need to know where they are. And it's one of the best way to get to a common language and talk to each other eye to eye. And every time we did the assessment, we had a very good engagement with the client. The few times where the client said, no, I don't want to do the assessment, I already know what to do, I want you to do this and that, we had the worst result. And so in terms of when not to use it, in my opinion, I would use it every time. And we can do it in a light version. So just as I said, capture and report and then talk about it together, or do the full-fledged assessment with interview, suggestion and everything. But either way, engaging with a customer, starting doing coaching and consulting without knowing where they are, what is their culture, it's very dangerous because you might come in with suggestion and immediately have a cultural negative response. And everybody goes, no, I don't want to do that, right? And so it's very important to understand with what are we dealing with, because if we are dealing with a very control-oriented culture, then we need to start proposing them more agile way of controlling and governing so they feel comfortable, rather than saying drop all the control and start with self-organizing team, right? So that is where people go like, no, not we're going to do that because, you know, we need to control everything. We have KPIs, we have our process and so on. So it's very, very important to have an understanding where a company is before you start engaging with them at every level.
Awesome. Great, thanks.
Cool. Tanya.
Hi. Is there any average of speed of transformation?
You mean for a whole company?
And yes. And if is there any intervention that usually acceleration? A kind of intervention?
No, there is no magic. There is no such thing. Well, to comment on this. So first of all, the speed at which organization would move toward becoming more agile. Also, remember the transformation. I hate the word transformation because it's assuming there is an end point, but there isn't, because becoming more agile is a continuous improvement approach. So you always get better every day. It's just a mindset change, right? And you start from where you are. You cannot start from an ideal standpoint because it's never working. So most of the frustrating experience we had with organization is that they start from where they are. They make a nice plan and a blueprint on how the organization should look in the future. Then they make KPI they need to achieve in the next 3 months. And then after they are 2 months down the line, they're all frustrated because they see that what they wanted to achieve in 3 months is probably 6 months or 9 months more far away in the future. And so depression starts and everybody starts saying, we're never going to make it. You know, agile doesn't work for us. But if instead of having that approach, you help them, show them, look, this is where you stand now, and this are problems. So how about starting tackling those problems? And we measure continuously as soon as our problem go away. So this creates a more positive response because people are celebrating the success and they see they're solving problem and they're moving in the right direction, as opposed to setting an non-achievable goal in the future. So this is trick number one. Never try to give them a time schedule or an end date for becoming agile, because they might do it. They will tick off all the boxes you want. They comply to your expectation, but they wouldn't change a bit. They will still be the same exact company with post-it on the wall. They rename teams in squad. They rename community of practice in guild and lines in chapters. End of the transformation. We are now like Spotify, right? So that's not what we want to happen. This is why we focus on a cultural evolution as well. And related to the second question, how can we have a bigger impact? Well, the science shows us, the complexity science shows us that you actually can have a larger impact by doing a lot of small intervention in each cohort, in each team you have in the organization, which are coherently moving in a common direction, as opposed to try to do big actions, big change management program with a lot of budget, a lot of people, a lot of planning, and a lot of coordination. So one of the best way to actually influence the culture and start having such impact in a gradual way is to actually work with leadership first, and making them understand that they're not losing their job, they're not losing their position, and they have a strong impact on how their culture will change. And if we can create coherence in the ways they lead, or the leadership approach, which is used in a certain group of people, then the likelihood that we will align the culture and coherently come to a point where the differences are minimal and needed, because we still need diversity, then it will be much easier for every step we move forward, that there will be no step backward. Because the biggest problem with change initiative is you do 2 steps forward and then you do 2 steps backward again, because someone is not happy, because you go to compromises and so on and so forth. So by creating a more coherent culture in the first place with more continuous intervention, you are having a much larger impact, which is consistent and persistent over time. And so it doesn't matter how fast you go. The important thing is you go and you keep on going forward instead of going 1 time forward and 2 times backwards.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else, guys? We burned the hour. It's exactly 1700 for us.
Yeah, sharp.
It's a bit earlier, huh?
Yeah,
It's
sure.
2 p.m. for you, no?
Yeah, it is.
It's noon.
It's noon.
Noon, midday.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So you are now 5 hours difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In winter is 3, in summer is 5.
Yes.
Okay.
And more questions? Yeah.
No.
If you guys have no
No,
more questions,
no, I
then
don't have
okay.
questions.
No, I'm fine.
Cool.
Oh, so thank you. So thank you, Andrea. Was awesome.
You're welcome.
This presentation explanation. I mean, some weeks ago, we know that was an amazing instrument to change organizations. Right now, we are more certain of that. And all the questions and the main points got all clear out. So thanks again for your patience and care to do this presentation. I can see some couples of opportunities for us here, and definitely the team can see others. So right now we have a quick homework to do, and to shortlist better maybe the
so
top.
Let me. How many salespeople? How many salespeople are in the call? Let me ask you a question. How many salespeople? Raise up your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So if I showed you the first version where you capture data and you just get the report out of it, how much money do you think you can ask for it to your client?
Well, I think something I mean, a bank like Itaú, something around $100K. Yeah.
For doing the whole process.
Something like that.
5 to 10 teams, $100K, something about that. Looks reasonable to expensive to little.
Yeah.
What do you think?
100K is peanuts. Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
But for the bank, I mean, for the bank is probably peanuts. But think about for a startup.
Yeah.
If we have a startup here and they have like 50 people, they're not going to pay 100K, right? So the question we are having is, if we do a package price, is one off for doing the OrgScan only 1 time, and you get a proportional decision. So if you want to do more complicated, probably the 100K is where we are going, with suggestions, with everything, right? And 5,000, no, how many people? You said 50 team or something like that. Anyways.
5 teams, yeah.
Yeah, 5 teams. So something like that is the price of the assessment. So we go around 20, 25Ks just for the capturing plus the assessment things and so on. But for the startup, we have to do something more simple. So we were thinking to start with the starter kit, we call it, as a small package. You just capture the 200 decision and you get the report generated automatically. And that would start around probably 2,000, 3,000 euro or dollar. So it's super cheap to start.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
oh,
but there is
nice.
not much analysis into it, right? So if we do it with full analysis, interviews and everything, probably with so many people, you are in the price range you said, around 100K.
Yeah, and also,
is there a strategy to upsell it?
Yes, that the idea of the starter kit is that you just get the report and you get curious because you see data, but those data are only from 200 decisions, are not from the whole company, right? And so you go like, I want to know more. What is the next level? Right. So the idea is you can chip in with the starter kit, and then if they like the result, then you can upsell. Okay, now we have to do the business alignment model. We have to do the the multiplier workshop. We have to go to continuous capturing. So you have to basically enter with a small chip, and then with the value of the result, you build the trust, and then you can upsell all of the rest.
Awesome.
Yeah, and also I believe that one of the many targets is to the following projects on that. So, yeah. I mean, since you mentioned the pyramid in the first thing in your presentation, there is things about leadership, there is thing about management styles, there is so a lot of stuff, and from that, for a company like Itaú, we could easily go for 6 months on something about 1 million. So. Yeah. The following, I believe, most of part of the project will be following up on that. Yeah.
Yeah. You need a lot of people anyway for so many. We need to work with a lot of people and have a lot of leadership alignment and do a lot of workshop and do a lot of coaching. So it's really a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well,
thanks, guys.
That's really nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
So
let's keep in touch.
Thanks again. It was awesome.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We'll see you
Bye-bye.
guys.